Hello and welcome to this episode of the Will Podcast, where we are talking all about the inner critic. Well, maybe not all about it because it's a pretty deep topic, but I want to get you started on normalizing that it's completely normal. We need another word for that, but it is, everyone has one. There's nothing wrong with you that you have an inner critic. I'm going to give you a tool to help you notice it and manage it. And then you're going to put it into practice, right? And then I'm going to share a framework, a way of rethinking about the inner critic that totally blew my mind when I learned it and reframed how I think about it. So first and foremost, let's talk about what the inner critic is and isn't, and normalize that we all have one. And why is this so important for women lawyers? So I have this one client, Meredith, and I've heard her say a couple of times, no one could ever be meaner to me than I can be to myself. And lawyers so often live and work in a culture of perfectionism. If you make a typo, you're out of the game, waking up with the fear of that you made some life-altering mistake, a jolt of anxiety that you didn't file something or you missed a deadline. Right? The level of expectation for perfectionism is so high in the legal culture. So, of course, you're not going to get everything right. You're human. And we all have these internal voices that I call the inner critic. Some people call them the judge or the skeptic. Or I learned in Kabbalah, which I'll talk about a little bit at the end. So stay tuned for this insight, which is where I learned it in my Kabbalah class. And Kabbalah is the kind of spiritual study of the Old Testament. And it's not religious, but it's a spiritual and practical way of making sense of the ancient texts in Judaism. So they call it the opponent in Kabbalah, which I think is really fascinating. So we all have these voices. And if the inner critic is stopping you, if all you're really hearing is you can't, you'll never, you made a mistake, you're worthless, who do you think you are, you'll never really be able to change, we don't want the inner critic driving the bus, right? Like that children's book, like Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus. Like maybe think about your inner critic as the pigeon. Right? I'm going to get into like how we can think about theirs. But I want to say this is normal. And we all have these parts of ourselves. And if you've heard about, or maybe in therapy, you're starting to work with something that's called internal family systems or IFS or parts work, you might be working with different parts of yourself, right? And like they say in IFS, and I'll link to that in the show notes, all parts welcome. So the inner critic, the inner judge, skeptic, opponent, whatever you call it. Maybe you call it a personification of your mom or a boss. Just know that it's normal, know that it's part of you, and make a decision now that you're not going to let it drive the bus. Right? So let's get into the tool I want to share with you today called Notice, Name, and New. And we're really already moving into it. So we've normalized, okay, everybody has this. I don't want to let it drive my life. So how can you notice your inner critic more? Look out for those keywords like, and you can't, you shouldn't, who do you think you are? Notice when you're speaking to yourself in that second person in a negative, derogatory way. That's your inner critic. Right? Because your true self, your higher self, your soul self would never speak to you that way. And your soul self is the part that's receiving these messages. And it can be, of course, very damaging. So notice those red flag words. Does it come with anxiety? Is it bitchy? Is it very critical? So notice it. And then give it a name or a label. So I share all about this in my clients, the students I work with in Will programs. We go way deeper into this. And this is one of the tools I share with them. But I share this story about my grandma Ann. My mother's mother was very critical. And I have a lot of compassion for her now. She would have been an amazing CEO and businesswoman, and she felt stymied by her life, and it came out in not nice ways. And she often criticized my weight, my eating, my clothes, whatever. It was just always critical. So I have an internalized Grandma Ann. And I picture her as like wearing a 1950s style apron and rail thin and with a dust bunny in her hand, like a dust broom in her hand. And whenever I see dust bunnies in the corners of my home, I'm like, oh, Grandma Ann, here it is. Like, why don't you keep your apartment cleaner? Right? So that's the kind of thing. Notice it, give it a name, give it a personification, give it a characterization, give it a weird little voice. There's a book called Taming Your Inner Gremlins, and I'll link to that in the show notes, where it's all these amazing drawings. And somehow that term gremlin, that feels very resonant for people when we're talking about inner critics. It's that mean, grouchy thing. But this is the tool. Noticing it and naming it is the way to calming it. And so what we do is we say, hi, inner critic, I see you. Hi, Grandma Ann. Hi, boss. Hi, bitchy Brenda. Whatever it is, that part of you, I see you. Thank you for alerting me to whatever you're alerting me to. I've got this. So you just say hello to it. You tell it you've got it. You say thanks. We can't banish any of these parts of ourselves as much as you might want to. Sometimes we can't. So just notice it, name it, and now we've cleared some space. The final part of the tool, new. So the tool is notice, name, and new. 3 N words. You've got to fill in the void. Nature abhors vacuum. So once you've cleared the space, tell yourself something new. I am smart. I am capable enough, and I am going to figure this out. Wait a second. I have gone to law school. I've passed the bar exam. I've been working X number of years as a lawyer. I'm clearly a capable person. You want to tell yourself something that feels true that you can get behind. You're like, okay, I'm a little stressed out in this moment. I can calm down. I've got the capacity to do that. I'm going to take a few deep breaths. And that phrase I shared, it comes from a friend of mine, Lisa, who left the practice of law. She worked in big law, boutique law, government, like she worked everywhere. She gave everything a try. And then she discovered she wanted to be a therapist. And she has gone on to transition completely out of law. And now she's a very established therapist. She's teaching. And when I asked her, I interviewed her years ago, and I save these interviews for my clients and students. They get to listen. There's a whole archive of interviews with women lawyers who are doing all sorts of things. And she said her mindset, her story she was telling herself as she was making that transition was, I am smart, I am capable enough, and I am hardworking. And that got her through. You don't need a lot. So pick a phrase that works for you, that feels true in your body. You're like, yeah, I am smart. Yeah, I am hardworking. Yeah, I can figure this out. So then let's take this into practice. You want to start putting it into practice and just get super aware. And maybe you can journal out what are some of the negative things that you frequently tell yourself. So you can ask inner critic, go ahead, let me have it. And write down the things that it says. You can't, you'll never, you shouldn't, it's too dangerous, it's too risky, whatever it is, let it come out. And just be like, okay, I hear you. I see you. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to tell myself something new now. And even if you just write that one phrase or those few sentences over and over again, I'm smart, I'm capable enough, I can figure this out, I'm hardworking, I've got this, thank you. You're on your way. You're on your way to calming your nervous system, to tapping into higher reasoning and problem solving, and being able to figure it out. Okay, so I want to just tell you a little bit more about when I learned about the opponent in Kabbalah. So I started studying Kabbalah a few years ago, and it's one of the very first lessons in Kabbalah is they teach about what they call the opponent. And the practice that they teach in Kabbalah is very similar. What they say is, thank you, what a pleasure. which still tickles me, right? And if you can laugh a little bit, if you can make your inner critic kind of cartoony, it dispels some of the power it has over us, right? If it's like a bumbling gremlin or my grandma on her apron, I can say, thank you. I hear you. I've got this. But what really blew my mind in Kabbalah was that it's actually the inner critic is a feature, not a bug. That the inner critic is there to help us grow. And so what if every time we heard it, we really did say, thank you. I've got this. Oh, what a pleasure. You're helping me grow. I mean, we might want to say F off sometimes, and you can do that too. So I offer that as like a little next level way to play with your inner critic. And I mean that, to play with it. And that's one of the things I love from the thank you. What a pleasure. It's like, what if we could make this a little more playful? What if we didn't always take beating ourselves up so seriously? What becomes possible for us? And that client, Meredith, I mentioned earlier, she's just made so much progress in this area. And the other day, she saw something that's a possibility that she never, ever would have seen as a possibility for herself before. And she's allowing herself to investigate it. And it's so cool. I don't want to say too much more about that because, that's her journey. But I just want to honor that this is a process. And I'll just do a quick recap. Normalize. Everyone has an inner critic. There's nothing wrong with you. You live in a culture and you work in a culture of perfectionism, and the inner critic is going to be present. So to use the tool of notice your inner critic, notice those key phrases it says to you. When you hear that, you should, you can't, those are clues. Give it a name, give it a label, make it cartoony, make it a little bit playful and funny, and then tell yourself something new. All right, that is today's short solo episode on the inner critic. Thank you so much. Where there's a will, there's a way. I'm so curious to hear how you use this. Let's get you on your way.